Hi Connley Clan fam! Today we are going to talk about homeschooling your kids that have an IEP. Should you or shouldn't you do it? So as a lot of you know, we have a very large family. We have 14 children, and we decided almost 1 year ago that we wanted to homeschool instead. Now our kids have been going to public school this whole time, and so we even have children that are in their 20s, so they went every year in public school. But we have decided that we thought it might be best at this point to homeschool. So we took our kids out of public school last November and we started homeschooling, but we have multiple children that have or used to have IEPs. So they would get extra services. Some of the kids did not have IEPs, but they still got special services. So a lot of times in our school district, they would give them like reading interventions and writing interventions and spelling interventions and math interventions and all kinds of interventions before they would ever put them on an IEP. Some of the kids though, they actually had learning disabilities or they had things like ADHD that did require them to have an IEP in place. Let me tell you though, I was not sure how this was going to work because we had so many kids with such a higher level of need in elementary school and then even going into middle school too. I at first was not sure how that was going to work. I just really knew that I thought homeschooling was going to be better for them. One thing that I had no clue is that if you homeschool and if your child has an IEP, they can actually go to the public school and take classes there because of that IEP. So the school district will still offer you those special services that the child normally got when they were in public school. They have to offer those to you even if you're homeschooling. And if you don't want them, I actually had to sign something saying that I was denying those services. I did not want those services. And so I was actually required to sign something saying that. So we did opt out of the special services because I thought that we could probably do the same things, like we can implement the same things here in our homeschool. And I also thought it might actually be better in a homeschool environment. Now I say that because I have learned after homeschooling now for almost a year that every child has their own pace. Every child learns in their own way, and that's probably not surprising to any of you. But when they're homeschooled, I'm able to let them learn at their own pace, and I'm able to let them learn in their own way. And it really has been a huge success, I feel like, because allowing them to do that, I feel like helps them learn so much more. So I feel like our kids have learned so much doing homeschool with us. Not only have they learned the book stuff, you know, by doing worksheets and online games and online quizzes, but they also have learned life skills. We have bought a house. We have bought a car. You know, we are doing everyday life with our kids, and they're seeing those things. They're learning what everyday life looks like because they're here every day watching us. And so that's huge, I feel like. And even if you have to work outside of the home, whereas we work in the home, but even if you worked outside of the home, your kids would still be seeing, you know, those everyday life things and how that works. The other thing is that we are able to do a lot of the things the school implements in school here. So the kids would get like a weighted lap mat if they have ADHD and they need that sensory input, or they had like backpacks with heavy stuff in them for them to wear, or they would get like extra reading help. So we have a lot of things that the school had sent home previously, and we're able to use that for the other kids in the house. We have the sight word sheets, and we'll do sight words. We also, one of the best things I feel like that has happened is we have one child. Now, most of our kids, they're so good about doing school. We don't have to stand over them. They just, at 9 o'clock, they get on their computers and they start doing, their assignments, and we don't have any trouble. So that has been a blessing. And I think most kids are probably like that. I do have one child that is in elementary school that I have the hardest time with. His ADHD, I think, is so bad that he has such a hard time focusing, even with medicine. Also, he has a hard time with wanting to learn. He just doesn't want to. And so when you factor in those two things together, it has become really hard. Now, for a little while there, I was so worried about him being behind. And we had a couple of viewers that had mentioned about going back a year, and just that you could do that they even do that in school. They used to hold kids back. Now they don't really hold kids back anymore. The No Child Left Behind thing. But I was able to go back, and I took the Common Core standards for the United States. And I found a website where it had the standard listed, and then it had worksheets for that standard. And I was able to print those worksheets off, go through them with him. So it does require me to sit down next to him, and I have to have 100% focus on him, because if I don't, he will get up out of his seat and he will leave. Plus, he has a really hard time reading, and for some reason, they thought that with some of the things he has going on, he'd have a hard time in math. And we have found that it is actually the opposite. He's pretty good at math, but he is really not very good at reading. And that's really hard because you need reading for everything, to read the directions, to read a story problem, so we a lot of times have to sit there and help him read that stuff. Now, we are giving him extra help in reading, and it still is really hard for him. But allowing him to work at his own pace too is great. If he was in school and he was behind, he'd have a really hard time keeping up with those lessons. Being home and learning, we're able to work with him at his pace, and I feel like it's so beneficial for him to do that. So we had to sit down next to him and have 100% focus on him, and I did that. And I went through all of the kindergarten math and all of the first grade math, and to make sure, especially for myself, to know where he was at. And so I felt so much better when I realized that he was pretty much caught up in math. We are working on language arts right now, and that is definitely harder for him. But he still is not as far behind as I thought he was, because he just has a really hard time studying or sitting down and doing the work. So that made me feel so much better. But I was able to do that, and I just think that is so amazing when you can give your kids the ability to work at their own pace, to go back and relearn things. I have, like with him, we're really working on language arts with just English. So I don't really require him to do Spanish right now, but all the other kids are learning Spanish. But I'm able to give him that leeway, which is nice. I can sit down and learn with all of the kids in their own way. So some may be more visual, some may be more auditory, and some are just really hands-on. And we're able to give them, we're able to meet those needs for each individual child. It's more individual, and I just find that helps so much, especially when your child has an IEP. I find that it actually is it's beneficial to do homeschool with a child that has an IEP, because you're able to give them all the extra support that they need in the home, and you're able to work at their own pace. And I find that actually has helped our kids and not hurt them. So I know a lot of times people are skeptical about it, and even I was worried about it at first. But after doing it for a year, I will say that I do think, and this is my own opinion, but for us, doing homeschool with the children that have IEPs is even more beneficial than homeschooling is for the kids that don't have the extra needs. I do think that homeschooling has been phenomenal for all the kids, regardless of whether they have an IEP or not. I think that letting them learn in their own way, at their own pace, letting them learn what they're interested in. Our kids are learning all kinds of high school topics already. They've been able to grasp them and understand them. They will take off more if they're very interested in a subject, or they'll go learn extra on their own if they're interested, as opposed to if they're not interested, they'll just take what we give them, and then they'll go research something that they're really interested in. And it has been a really amazing thing to watch. So if you are worried about homeschooling a child with an IEP, don't be, because I have found that it just works out so much better. But if you are worried about it, you could always sign up for the classes that the school gives. They will give them that extra support, even if they're homeschooled. So that is always an option. But we will see you guys in our next video. Bye.